Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to discuss a very novice topic, but it's something that can be useful for the general population. Obviously, most of my viewers already train. They understand the difference between exercise and training, but maybe some newer people here, they need a refresher on it. Because, you'll always see people say that, and they'll see that you train or you lift, and a lot of times people who don't train will say things like, well, you could do something else as a form of exercise. Right? And for those of us who understand these things, we know that exercise and training are two very different things. In fact, that's the problem when sometimes people give you a workout. Oh, here's a workout. They didn't give you 30 workouts to do sequentially? Well, then that's not training. That's just exercising. And what is exercising? Exercising is doing physical activity for a short-term or an acute response. In other words, why do people exercise? To burn calories. That could be one reason. That's a big reason. Is burning calories a long-term adaptation? No. You burn the calories, right? Someone says, I'm just going to go take a jog or a walk around the block, or I'm going to do a bunch of burpees because I want to burn some calories. Okay, a short-term immediate response. There's either an immediate gratification or an immediate response that you want. So jumping around, hopping around, taking a jog, whatever, and I'm not saying running can't be a form of training, because it can, but the way most people do it, it's not training, it's exercise. And exercise, again, is generally done with no concern for the adaptation it causes a week from now. Okay, we have no planned expectations of what it's going to do beyond burn some calories, get us moving, get our heart rate up, make us feel better. Maybe you just want the rush of endorphins. You just want the rush of endorphins. You want to feel like you've done something. Okay, you want to feel like you've done something. And that might even actually be okay from a conditioning perspective. I mean, a lot of GPP can work off that concept, and people can get into decent shape doing a bunch of just strength-based conditioning work, right? You could take a bunch of CrossFit WODs, and you're just exercising, and you can actually get in decent shape doing that. But you have no way to ensure the exact adaptation and response. Okay, what's the difference between that and training? Training is when we engage in physical activity that is planned. It is done sequentially with long-term consequences in which we know how each workout feeds into the next workout over the course of weeks, months, or years with a specific desired outcome. In other words, it is planned. For example, my training, I do the West Side method or the conjugate method, where I'm maxing out every week. I run 3-week pendulum waves of dynamic effort work based upon percentages of my 1-rep maxes, and I do very large amounts of hypertrophy and volume work to build up all the weak links, all the weakest muscles on all of my big exercises. There's 4 distinct training sessions that are completely different from each other each week that are done sequentially, some of them loaded into different waves of different links. Right, all my speed work is done in 3-week blocks, and I have 3 different sets of 3-week blocks I run right now on my dynamic effort work or speed work, to where we rotate through different bars and rotate the percentages of my max used in each session for a sequential response. Okay, that's training. What's the purpose of it? To get as strong as an explosive as I possibly can, to build maximum strength and to a secondary degree power. Right? I want to be good, obviously, at the power lifts, but it also applies to all squatting, pushing, and pulling, is to get as strong as possible for my ability to hit maximum weights. And it's a complex system built around that sequentially. right? With a lot of very specific movements and exercises to build up the weak links. It's all planned. It's all structured in a flow based upon the stress recovery and adaptation cycle of the human body. How about if someone is training for running? They're going to run a sequential system. Do you think people who, if they want to win a marathon, they want to do well in a marathon, do you think that they just jog for a non-specific distance or a non-specific amount of time? Or do you think they even just focus upon purely say, can I do slightly more than the day before? Maybe if they just started. But as they get more involved into it, they're going to start training specifically for running, and they're going to have different phases through their week where they might run at different durations, lengths, intensities, have back-off days. It's going to be planned sequentially for an adaptive response, a long-term response of what is going to happen over weeks and months, what is going to be the adaptation by my body towards specific outcomes that are planned. They're not random, they're not unknown. In other words, they do this because they say, I want a goal of being able to run a marathon in X amount of minutes, and this is a sequential system I have to implement in order to get that outcome. And therein lies your problem with just workouts. And that's fine. I mean, let's be realistic here. If most people just did some workouts a couple times a week and they got out and exercised every day, that would largely end most of the obesity crisis and half of the health problems that we have. People say, like what? Heart disease, cancer, diabetes. Yes, your training and exercise affects cancer rates. That's not make-believe. That is well documented in the scientific literature. Cancer is largely lifestyle induced. In other words, only a minority of people just had bad luck on cancer. And they do. And you got to feel bad for those people, right? You have to feel bad for those people because they just had bad luck. The majority of people who get cancer, it's self-inflicted. And that's what the meta-analysis say. 70 to 90%, depending on the cancer type, is completely lifestyle-based. Now, not training, not exercising is a lifestyle choice. But what people need to remember, training will always produce larger, better outcomes. Why? Because it's not random. It's not random. Training involves systems. And it usually involves systems by people who've observed many athletes and lifters and worked with them over the years who develop systems to produce the most effective results. And I want people to understand that difference. Okay? There's a big difference between just exercising and getting some response versus programming your training for a maximum outcome. And I want to be clear, it doesn't mean that one is harder than the other. In other words, you could exercise into the ground. You could exercise into the ground and still get slower results than someone who puts in 20% less work than you on a structured system of training that is written by someone who really knows what they're doing. Even though they might not work quite as hard as you, right? They might not work quite as hard as you, they get faster results. Why? Because they're targeting their efforts. And because we get larger and larger responses as these things feed into each other, we get more for our amount of effort that we put in, and it becomes sequential. It's one thing if you're barely making any progress versus the person who's training and they're stacking on muscle and strength and performance and their energy turnover is going higher and higher and higher, and they don't perceive that they're training any harder. In other words, for me to deadlift 600 pounds requires no more effort on my part than a lot of you noobs out there to pick up 120 pounds. To me, it's the same thing. There's no difference in how hard I feel like I'm pulling on the barbell. That's the difference. So to someone who's looking at, oh man, that must be insanely difficult. No, you guys watched me pull 615 this year. Did it look that hard? I held it to the top and stopped and talked for a minute and then set it down. It was hard. It was my best. But that's the difference. It's the difference between training versus exercise. It doesn't mean that you're going harder because you're training. You're just targeting your efforts in the most efficient way. You're getting the most out of those efforts because it's planned and programmed with a desired response. It's not randomly throwing effort into things, hoping something sticks. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.